welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is episode number 103, and we have a special guest today. Amy Berger is joining us. If you don't know Amy, you really should. She's written some wonderful books, one of which is nominated for this year's top keto book. Well, so hey. That is End Your Carb Confusion. But she's also in the process right now of writing a book about the thyroid. So it seemed a perfect time to invite her on the show, which I've been meaning to do anyway because she's awesome. So join me and Amy today in a discussion of the thyroid and a couple other things. Hi and welcome. This is Kim Howerton and I am joined by a special guest today, Amy Berger. Hey, Amy.
Hey, Kim, long time no see.
I know, it's been a while. So I know Amy well from many keto conferences. She is a smart cookie. And I thought, let's have her on to talk about, well, just to have her on because she's worth hearing and knowing about. And many of you actually sometimes think we're the same person. So that is good that we can clarify. We are two dark-haired women in the keto space. And sometimes I'm like, book was great. And I'm like, which book was that?
Like Superman and Clark Kent, you know.
Exactly.
We're both here, so you know we're not the same person.
Right. But we're not in the same location. So I don't know. Amy's written several books. She's got the Stall Slayer for people who are stalled. That's an important one. We both talk about that subject a lot. And you have the Alzheimer's Antidote, which is super important. Was that your first book?
That was the first, yeah.
Okay. And then with Eric Westman, you wrote End Your Carb Confusion. And then you're in the process of writing another book, which is perfect timing. What's your next book on?
My next book is about thyroid. And it's actually, I say we because I just teamed up with someone to co-do it with me. And we don't really mention keto at all. It's really just thyroid.
Just about the thyroid. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, nice. So one of the reasons I reached out to you was I've been bombarded, and I think you have been too, with inquiries recently, because there was a video that went up on YouTube that I think the title was Keto Wrecked My Thyroid, and a lot of people are freaking out. So I thought, let's talk about it.
I got to say, I was hesitant to even dip my toes in that. But when we were talking before recording, when the fourth person sent me it and said, hey, what do you think? And one person, all right, two people, four people. Oh, I better look into this at this point.
Right. So. And I just want to preface this by saying, well, Amy especially, but we are generally nice people. We have no intention of attacking any human on the planet. We're all good people doing good work. It's more just we want to talk about the points that get brought up because people get scared. So I have thyroid issues, and I know you've had thyroid issues. Thyroid issues are just incredibly common. Can you give people just a brief overview of thyroid?
I'll try. So the thyroid gland, which is in your neck, kind of in front of the windpipe or sort of wrapped around the windpipe, it is the master regulator of your metabolic rate. And you really have to appreciate how important that is and how it basically affects everything that goes on in your body. So by setting your basal metabolic rate, meaning the amount of energy you burn through and how quickly you burn through it, just doing nothing, not working out, not running, cycling, just being alive, how much energy you require just to power your everyday, functions. Part of that is also regulating your body temperature. So one of the classic symptoms of low thyroid is being cold all the time. And the reason this is such a big deal is because, and I'm going to nerd out for like a few seconds.
Go for it.
All of the enzymes and stuff in the body are designed or how created, whatever you want to call it. They function best at a certain temperature. And if your body is much, much lower than that, then those enzymes or hormones do not work the way they're supposed to work. So all kinds of functions start to kind of just not go as well as they're supposed to go. And this is why low thyroid, and of course, there's hypothyroidism, which is low thyroid hormone, and there's hyperthyroidism, which is too much. Hyper is much more rare. The hypo is much more common. And you and I, being like nutrition professionals, people that struggle with weight loss, most of them don't have the hyper, they have the hypo. So the low metabolic rate and the low temperature explain just about all the signs and symptoms. The being cold, fatigue, brain fog, constipation, even the muscle contractions in your colon slow down. Everything slows down. You tend to have a low heart rate, low blood pressure, depression. Like I like to think of it that even your thoughts, kind of your emotions slow down. I mean, that's not a scientific term, but
but it makes sense. Your hair falls out, all sorts of things like that.
Hair loss. Some people often have like swelling of the fingers and the legs. And there's so many different signs and symptoms, and it can just downright wreck your quality of life. You just feel like garbage. And it's as if you're kind of living on slow mode. Everyone else is out there living life and enjoying, and you're kind of like, meh. I don't wish it on anybody. It is awful.
Yeah. I was diagnosed before I found keto, but not that far before. Like I was sort of like, okay, I got to fix all this stuff. And it started my journey, but it took me a long time to dial in my right dosage as well, because to jump a step, one of the ways you treat hypothyroidism, if you don't have enough thyroid hormone, is you can supplement thyroid hormone. And that tends to be the thing that most people need to do.
Yeah. And it is, unfortunately, it is often kind of a tap dance, or like it's a trial and error period of finding the right dose. And there's different kinds of thyroid medicine. There's a lot of different kinds. And there's no right or wrong. There's no good or bad. It's really what works best for you. And it just takes a lot of experimenting, unfortunately.
Right. The thing that I find is a lot of people will get a diagnosis, will start taking some type of thyroid hormone, like maybe Synthroid, which is synthetic T4, and they'll be like, oh, I don't feel any better, so it must not be my thyroid, and they'll like give up. And I always want to tell people it can take like up to a year or longer sometimes to really figure out the right way to supplement for you.
Yeah. And it's, I see this all the time. There's there's probably more than one chapter in the book I'm writing on this, just Synthroid specifically example.
Yeah.
That's the brand name. It's
right.
levothyroxine. So for anyone out there taking levothyroxine, that is a T4 only medication. T4 is actually considered the inactive hormone. Your body has to convert it into T3, which is the active hormone. Some people do great on Synthroid levothyroxine. They just do great. Some people, their bodies, for whatever reason, are not making that conversion, and they need a little extra T3, which you can take T4 and T3, both of them together, or the natural desiccated thyroid. The most common brand name in the US is Armour, but there's just a lot, Nature-Throid, West-Throid, there's a lot of different ones, but it's called NDT, natural desiccated thyroid. It's actually pig thyroid gland, like just dried, dehydrated pig thyroid, crushed up into a powder and put into a capsule. So, that gives you the T4 and the T3 together in one. And it's, again, there's good or bad, there's just what works. But
what works, exactly.
I just see it all the time that a lot of people on Synthroid, like you said, they still have all their same signs and symptoms as if they're not on any medication at all. And it's just a lot of doctors are really hesitant to prescribe the T3, which is a shame.
Right. Yeah, because I find more often than not, well, I don't have statistics, but I find a lot of the time when I talk to people, they make plenty of T4. The T4 isn't the problem. What's often the problem, not always, but often the problem is that they don't convert the T4 to the T3. Right. So it's sort of like water everywhere and not a drop to drink, because you can't use T4 until it converts. And if it's not converting, you can't use it.
Yeah. And the problem with this is, the problem is that so many doctors will only ever measure, like if you ask for a thyroid test or lab test, they'll test the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone. And if you're lucky, they'll test T4. And like you were saying, so many times, those are normal. Those are both normal, but if you would dig deeper and measure the T3 or something called reverse T3, other thing, you would see a problem. And it's a huge
problem.
A huge issue in the proper diagnosis and treatment. And I mean, we're not doctors, but so we see this in clients, and all we can do is give them information. They still have to find a doctor who's either going to order the correct test or prescribe, the appropriate medicine.
Right.
And it's hard.
Right. So now we know a little bit more, right? So thyroid is an essential hormone. You can't live without it. Your body makes T4 and then needs to convert it to T3 to be used. And so we also now know that you need to get the proper testing to really diagnose if you have hypo or hyperthyroidism. But again, hyper, much more rare and different. Today, we're really talking about hypothyroidism. Yeah. And so one of the things that people say is keto is bad for your thyroid. And I will say, I do know one thing that we can talk about. So it does look like on keto, when people are in ketosis, some people have a slightly lowered T3 number when they do blood tests. However, what I've learned in my studies is these people are generally asymptomatic, that this slightly lower T3 number looks like the explanation has been posed by people like Dr. Stephen Phinney that our T3 can become more efficient if we have lower insulin levels, and therefore we are functioning at a lower level and we don't make more T3 than we need usually. Have you heard this discussion before?
I have, yeah. And Stephen Phinney, what does that guy know?
I know, right?
I think for anyone watching or listening, Stephen Phinney is one of the most brilliant keto researchers,
like the
out
godfather.
There. My co-op, Dr. Westman, calls him the nutritional genius of our time. So, I have heard that. And I am sort of in agreement with you in that I'm not going to say I don't care what somebody's lab numbers are. I care, but I am far more concerned with how someone feels. And if they don't have any symptoms of low thyroid, if they feel great, everything's good, I'm not really concerned if the T3 is lower. I'm far more concerned with how somebody feels, really.
Right.
I want to say that what you were saying about how on keto, a lot of people's T3 will decrease a little bit, but they feel fine. And that we speculate that it's because the body maybe becomes more sensitive to the T3, so you need less to have the same effect. I just want to be clear with people that we don't know for certain. That's kind of a
speculation
or a hypothesis.
Yeah, it's a theory.
Yeah.
But I think what we do know is every top thyroid person I've talked to has said, if someone doesn't have symptoms and their numbers are generally in line, but maybe a little off, you wouldn't diagnose that person with hypothyroidism because having symptoms is required in the diagnosis.
I would hope so, yeah.
Okay. So I'll just give a little history for people that don't know. I don't want to stir the drama or anything. I just want to explain as much as I need to because people have questions. So a video came out recently that suggested that being in ketosis for long periods of time, not that short periods of keto were a problem, but extended periods of ketosis caused high cortisol, and high cortisol would tank your thyroid hormones. Do you know much about the ketosis cortisol discussion?
To be honest, I don't really. That's all I can really say. I wish I did. I haven't looked a lot at that particular biochemistry.
Okay. So you also looked into some of these topics. Do you think that keto specifically is a worse diet for your thyroid than other diets?
No, I mean, first of all, we need to be clear that millions of people have hypothyroidism who are not on ketogenic diets. So now, I mean, and the person who made that video did not suggest that keto is the only thing that causes hypothyroidism. But I just want to be clear for anyone watching or listening to this, that clearly hypothyroidism can come from any number of reasons other than a keto diet. I mean, the first thing I want to say is you and I, and anyone who's kind of followed at least the anecdotes, the patient and client accounts of this, a lot of people come into keto with a thyroid problem, and keto actually corrects it. They actually feel better. I mean, I've known several people who were able to come off of thyroid medicine after adopting a low carb or ketogenic diet. Now, that seems to be more common specifically with Hashimoto's, with the autoimmune form of low thyroid. Not all hypothyroidism is Hashimoto's. That's just, it is very common.
It is the most common cause, but not the only cause.
Yeah. And something maybe worth mentioning, I don't know, for whatever reason, women are far more susceptible to thyroid issues than men. Men are not immune, but like in the book I'm writing, the figure that I saw was it's a 9-to-1 ratio of women to men with low thyroid. So it's, for whatever reason, it affects women a lot more. So in some cases, keto actually corrects a thyroid problem. In other cases, and I think we'll get into a little more detail, the overarching thing that I think we've both seen is that it's not necessarily keto as it is either deliberate or unintentional calorie restriction, women eating far too little, maybe especially eating far too little in combination with over-exercising. I mean, this is a pattern we see all the time. People sort of coming into this way of eating already kind of with, I won't say disorder, but I like distorted thinking about food and exercise and all that. And I think it's like I said, deliberate or unintentional massive calorie restriction. And that, frankly, that will affect your thyroid, but that would happen on any diet that fits that bill. Severely calorie restricted, too much exercise, too much whatever. That's not unique to keto. That's a phenomenon that happens anytime the body is under that kind of nutritional stress, for lack of a better phrase.
Right. And so I totally agree. What I do find is there is a population of women, especially, you could say people, but I only ever hear about it in women, that I actually say maybe keto isn't right for you, who are their baseline insulin level is 1, right? It's very, very low. They are very lean. Maybe they're under 20% body fat or less. They work out every day. They have all of these things. And to speak to the cortisol thing, it's like cortisol, right? Cortisol is a stress hormone for people that don't know. And the level of sort of taxation upon their body when all of these things are happening, and then they're under eating, essentially you're just a house of cards that's just going to crumble, and your thyroid will give. It'll be like, basta, enough. So it is true that it is possible in a ketogenic milieu to tank your thyroid, but it's not the ketosis itself. It's probably the way you're doing all the things that you're doing in ketosis.
Milieu is one of my favorite words, but I've heard Rob Wolf, right? I've heard Rob Wolf. I mean, he didn't coin this phrase, but I hear it from him the most. He calls it the allostatic load. It's the total load of the exercise and the lack of sleep, and you're working 5 days a week, and this and that, and now you're not really eating enough to fuel all that. And I've had this. Maybe we'll talk about later. I've had multiple clients who I told to eat more carbohydrate. I mean, you and I, neither of us is like a keto zealot. Not everybody needs a ketogenic diet. Like, if you're lean and healthy and active, you do not need to eat like an epileptic child. Okay. You don't need a medical treatment diet. And I have had to recommend to people, I think you need, now you don't need 200 grams of carbs a day, but maybe you need more than 25. So,
the other thing is maybe you just need more food too. So I see a lot of women come to me who are eating under 1,200 calories for long periods of time. So I celebrate the recent increase in protein that everyone's been getting into. I've been doing it for several years. Amy's super into protein. Like, protein is important, and under eating protein is terrible. And at the same time, unfortunately, in our culture, if a little is good, a lot is better. And so people are like, okay, if I shouldn't have so much fat and I should have more protein, then probably I shouldn't have any fat and I should have all the protein. And you're like, wait, what? Something got lost in translation.
I totally agree. And I've been on the record as saying this on my own YouTube channel that I adore Ted Naiman. I think women have been done a massive disservice the last few decades. We've been told our protein should be about the palm of our hand size or a deck of cards. That's garbage. Throw that advice out the window. But I totally agree with you that this is the emphasis on protein and like, oh, if you're stuck in a whatever, like bump up the protein, cut down the fat. That doesn't mean eat no fat and like live on egg whites and live on canned tuna, because I see this backfiring. People are probably going to go too far. They're not going to eat enough fat. And I agree with you that with regard to the thyroid, part of it is just not eating enough food and not enough energy overall.
Yeah.
But I think it's made worse when women were restricting protein, because overall in just women's health, we've been made afraid of protein. And in the keto world, it's going to turn into sugar. It's going to spike your insulin and all of this like sort of biochemically correct, but real world, meaningless, nonsensical, fear mongering that's out there. I wonder if that's part of the problem with these thyroid issues is the total calories, but also basically living on olive oil, living on, fat bombs, because women were made afraid of protein, that they weren't even getting, maybe if protein had been adequate, then some of this might not have happened. But I don't know,
Right. And we're not speaking to anybody's, like the people that are making these videos. We're not saying we know what's wrong with this person. We're just saying like, this is what we find in our practices.
Yeah, my concern is like, I don't want those possibilities to scare people away from trying a nutritional therapy that could quite literally change or save your life. If you are living with morbid obesity, type 2 diabetes, PCOS, hypertension, whatever, I don't want some hypothetical thyroid issue to scare people away from trying an astoundingly powerful dietary therapy, right?
Right. And if you are experiencing hypothyroid symptoms, like Amy described, you feel run down, you're cold all the time, your hair is thinning, especially your eyebrows, your eyelashes. If you're experiencing these things, get tested, get a complete set of tests, see what's going on with the numbers. And even if the numbers come back normal, but you still feel like crap, the fact that you feel like crap matters. And if you want to try adding a little bit of carbohydrate to see if it makes you feel better, I'm actually not against it. But honestly, the amount of carbohydrate you'd probably, if you've been in ketosis for a long time, the amount of carbohydrate you would have to add to potentially put you out of ketosis is quite a bit of carbohydrate. I don't think the problem is ketosis. I think the problem is just maybe your body needs more fuel. And by adding some carbs, sometimes people's hunger signals are so squelched on a ketogenic diet. They're like, but I'm not hungry. And they're eating 800 calories. And I'm like, you need to be hungrier.
That's exactly why I said earlier, intentionally or like deliberately or unintentionally restricting. I think a lot of it is unintentional. Hunger is so well controlled for so many of us that we just don't eat. But I do want to because when people told me about this person that was talking about thyroid and keto, I was like, oh no, I'm like, oh, what am I in for? Like, I didn't want to watch it because I'm like, I know what's coming and I don't even want. There were 2 videos, I watched them, and I was actually, I won't say pleasantly surprised, but it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be. And I'm going to just be the devil's advocate for a minute here, but it's not really. Like you and I, some people feel better with more carbs. I was speaking to Tyler Cartwright. You know Tyler, right? From Keto.
Yeah, I know Tyler. Yeah.
Yeah. So for anyone watching,
he's been on the channel.
Tyler, he's one of the founders of Keto Gains, and they also they created Element. Those of you that like the Element electrolyte, he literally created the product. And Tyler's really, really brilliant with metabolism, physiology, and all that. So I was asking him, what do you make of this thyroid stuff? And he brought up a good point. So we're constantly saying that ketosis is a fasting mimicking diet, right? Your blood sugar is kind of low normal, insulin is low normal, glucagon is dominant, you're burning a lot of fat. A lot of the metabolic and especially some of the psychological benefits that happen on keto come because it's as if your body's in a fasted state, but you actually are eating food.
Right.
And Tyler, pointed out that if your body really does think it's fasting for that long, like a really, so the person that made the video was sort of correct, this very prolonged period of ketosis, there may be a subset of people whose thyroid does slow down from that. The slowdown in thyroid or the lowering of the hormone is a protective mechanism. It's not, nothing's going wrong. It's not a malfunction.
Not breaking. You can't it's
your
not
body
destroyed.
Is trying to keep you alive by like if you're eating so little or your body thinks you're fasting or something, it's going to slow your metabolic rate so that you don't burn out and die. This is a protective mechanism. It's just sort of mismatched because you're not actually starving to death. You're just you're eating a diet that's giving your body the signal that, hey, we're in a certain metabolic state. We need to be careful. And I just think, because clearly not everybody develops thyroid problems on keto. But if some people do, I don't want to ignore or dismiss the people who do. Right. If there is some degree of individuality and all that, I mean, we all have a lot more in common than not in common. But I think Tyler might be onto something in, like, there may be a subset of people who are more sensitive to that, but like the person who created the video, she did not badmouth keto at all. She just said she has concerns about women doing it well, and she mentioned men too, very, very long term. And she's reintroducing carbohydrate in an effort to correct this. She was very clear. She's still absolutely low carb. She's like under 100 grams. That's definitely still a low carb diet. It's just not, it's enough to bring her out of ketosis. So I'm going on and on. I want to acknowledge that maybe this is an issue for some people, but I don't want that to scare other people away from doing this.
Right. I guess my perspective is, if you start noticing symptoms of hypothyroidism and you want to see if it might be that, well, the first thing I want to say is, if you're doing a lot of fasting, there are certain things that I don't think people with hypothyroidism should do. And extended fasting or even a lot of fasting is on the list of no's for me. And I don't mean like, you have to eat in the middle of the night. You can have a normal overnight kind of situation, but that like pushing the window and tight and that kind of thing. And then also extended periods of caloric restriction. I think if you have hypothyroid issues in your history, or you have you've had it in the past, or you continue to have it, you need to think of yourself as a little bit more of a delicate flower, and you can't maybe go to those extremes because you're just a little more sensitive and your body's not going to respond as well. So if there's any signs of a previous issue, I would not do extreme caloric restriction or fasting in any major way.
Yeah, this is going back to like where you said earlier, if some is good, more is better. Right. Like, so if I'm not supposed to be just snacking all day, every single day, well, then I should never eat ever. Or like, I'm doing something wrong if I eat one meal a day. And the zealotry is like, anyone listening or watching, please know this. You're not doing something wrong if you feel better eating 2 or 3 meals a day. Like, I know this OMAD 1 meal a day thing is all the rage, or you have to do what works best for you. And I agree with you. There's so much emphasis on fasting. People are like afraid to eat now. They're like, they're terrified to put food in their mouths.
Yeah, it's terrible. And then if you are like, well, maybe a little more carbs would make me feel better. Hey, I eat more carbs. I don't know about Amy, but I eat more carbs now because it makes me feel better. Not because of my thyroid so much that I actually was starting to get too hungry at a certain point. Like, if I ate enough ribeyes and high fat meals to keep me satiated, I started to gain weight. Whereas if I introduced more fibrous carbs, I was more satisfied at a more moderate amount. And so I was like, oh, okay, this works for me. So if you're like, hey, I think some more quality whole food carbs would be a benefit to me, it's not like I have a problem with that. It's that what I more wanted to respond to was the people freaking out. And I don't think a freak out is necessary.
Yeah. I think, because again, like, this is such a powerful diet. It's so good for fixing so many things. I don't want people to be scared away from it, but just, keep an eye on yourself, sort of monitor how you feel, how things are going. Yeah. I just, I don't want to downplay the real life experience of someone who is having an issue.
Absolutely.
But I think there's so much more of what you and I were saying going on, like women who are already overtaxed physiologically, and now they want to do fasting. Now they want to do an ultra strict ketogenic diet where their hunger is so controlled that they're barely eating. I think that probably has more to do with these things than just keto,
Yeah. And unfortunately, in this day and age, and fortunately, both things, right? There are so many voices out there talking about what keto is, what is keto, what is keto. And ultimately, Amy Berger, I remember back when we met, and I remember that you were like, I just talk about low carb. I don't even use the word keto. And I was like, Amy is she's not on trend, right? Like, everyone's using the word keto. You should use the word keto too. And now I'm like, Amy Berger was genius. Genius.
I appreciate that. I use keto a lot more now because that's what everybody searches for. Nobody's searching for low carb. Nobody's searching for Atkins anymore. I wish they were, but yeah, it's the emphasis on keto really kind of took people in a direction that is not so helpful all the time.
Right. And so what we're saying with that conversation, I think, is low carb just simply is like, find the carb level that works for you. Just don't eat a lot of crappy, carby, highly it's like eat an appropriate amount for your body of, wholesome carbs.
Yeah. Or like in the book that I did with Dr. Westman, End Your Carb Confusion, we have 3 different levels of carbohydrate intake. And we say, look, if you do have type 2 diabetes, if you have PCOS or fatty liver, or this whole list of things, maybe start out with strict keto. Do that for a while, get rid or reverse your condition, feel great, be healthy, then maybe start experimenting with a little more carbohydrate. Like, you could stay ultra strict keto if you want to, but we also allow for, like, maybe you don't need to. Maybe you have, I think there's a lot of people eating strict keto who have more flexibility with carbs than they realize. And again, not 200 grams a day, but 60, 85 grams. That's still a very low carb diet.
I mean, I always joke about carrot gate, right? Like, somebody will put carrot in a recipe that's like 1 carrot in the whole recipe. Mind you, I'm going to admit, like, I was once one of these people, but I was also once a young, stupid person, which is, like, we all have our teenage phase. But no, it's not a huge deal. I got some filtered milk the other day. It's a new brand, but like Fairlife kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, it has like 7 grams of carbohydrates per cup. And I calculated the grams in carbohydrates in heavy whipping cream, and it's 6 grams of carbohydrates per cup. It's basically the same amount of carbs. So it's like we get stuck in little thought patterns, right? Yeah. So it's like, it's yes, and it's not no, but it's yes. Keto is a very healthy diet. Yes, you might need ketosis for a medical condition you have, but do you have to be keto to lose weight and be healthy? Not necessarily, but if you want to be, is it unhealthy? No. That's kind of my thought pattern.
Totally agree.
Trying to bring some reasonableness to the world.
Yeah, there's billions of people all around the world, healthy, lean people who don't eat ketogenic diets.
Right.
So, keto is not the only way to go, but for a lot of people, it's really, really helpful.
Well, and for me, I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. If someone had written down my current diet and given it to me when I was close to 300 pounds, and completely out of control with food, I would have been like, F you, I'm not doing that. Like, it would have seemed like no, but I would do keto based on the way keto was explained to me, because I got to eat more like of these things that I thought were yummy. And I don't know. So it appealed to me. And then getting into ketosis did help me from what I would guess is a biochemical perspective. I was less hungry than I would have been otherwise. I did feel more satiated. It seemed to be kind of healing to my disordered brain as well, because we know that ketones can help with a variety of mental and cognitive issues. And there's a suggestion, there's a nutritional psychiatry field kind of opening up. Yes. That it can be helpful for, and I certainly had disordered thinking and mental state, but I drifted over time to more carbs again. And I love the way I now, and I don't want to go back to full keto either. So my fear is that people who are thriving on keto and or people who hold on to keto like a lifeline, because for them it is, will get scared and discouraged if they hear an alarmist statement.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that people just need to be aware of how they feel. See how you feel and don't be afraid. If you start to feel not so great, don't be afraid to tinker. That's another problem that happens is we get so siloed, oh, this thing is working so well and it's working so well. Well, if at some point it stops working so well, don't be afraid to get out of that. Just because it was working great for a year or two doesn't mean in year 3 it's going to be the appropriate thing.
Right. And I think people misunderstand. People are like, well, don't do, you often hear this advice, don't do keto if you're not going to do keto the rest of your life because it's a lifestyle. And I'm like, we all shift a little bit as we age, life changes. What happened is I went keto, and what became primary for me was being a healthy human. And then I was like, oh, my identity is not keto or low carb or this. It's doing the thing that keeps me healthy. You can have that identity. Mm-hmm. You're like, yeah.
Yeah, because just keto, it's a corrective diet, right?
Yeah.
It can correct the physiology that's causing type 2 diabetes or PCOS. And once it's corrected, you don't have to keep correcting it. I mean, you can stay strict keto if you want to, but you might want to introduce some
have
stuff.
Have a half an orange at lunch. Yeah, it's fine. And at the same time, I also want to say, because I see it in my clients, I have had clients who seem to be fairly metabolically healthy. They've lost 100 pounds. They're doing great in a lot of ways. They're like, I would like to eat more salad, literally more salad. It's not, jelly donut.
Right.
And somehow they have not yet figured it out. There's something internal where they open the door just a little bit to more carbs, and then they start binging. It's literally like salad for some people is a gateway drug.
Yes.
And I have to honor that. And it's something, we're working on and we're working with, but you can't say, well, I should be able to do this thing just because Amy and Kim said I should be able to do it. You have to go behind how it happens when you do. If you're like, I thought I was metabolically healthy, but I had a half an orange, my blood sugar went to 250, that's probably not appropriate for you then.
Yeah.
Same thing. If you had half an orange and then that night you had your first binge in 2 years, we need to back things up and figure out what's more functional for you, because then it's not. But that's a you thing. That's a person by person thing. That's a having to navigate your waters. It's not necessarily an everybody thing.
I could not agree more. Yeah, that's an individual thing. And it's reintroducing carbs is a slippery slope, because there are going to be some people who the salad or the quarter cup of strawberries leads to a 6-week bender, and then the flip side of that, you probably have foods like this. I know I do. There are foods that are low carb, nutritious, wholesome foods that I can't have because they're binge foods. And one example is I hate avocados, but I discovered that I love guacamole. So I won't have avocado in a Cobb salad or in a thing, make it into guacamole and I'm in trouble. If it's a pint, I'm going to eat a pint. If it's a barrel, I'm eating the barrel. So, okay, great. That's a low carb, high fat food. I can't have it. or I
Right.
can,
Or you
but
can't have it in your house.
yeah, I can get at a restaurant where the portion is automatically controlled.
Right.
Same thing with sour cream. I could eat sour cream with a spoon as if it's sweetened yogurt. So you just have to know yourself. There's a basic framework, and then everyone has to do what works for them.
Absolutely. So, tying it back to where we were at the beginning, I think ultimately Amy and I are both like, experiment with yourself and see what works best for your body and what you feel best on.
Yeah.
Done deal. And in terms of what we both know about how by the way, this will be part of a series. I'll go into more thyroid stuff in other venues with other people and research. So it's going to be sort of a rounded out topic. I wanted to start with Amy because she's amazing. And it was well timed that she came on the channel. But getting back to where we started from in the video, I just want to reassure people in the world, because you might be freaking out right now based on some things you've heard, that there might be something about the way that you're eating that is not optimizing your thyroid. That thing may not be keto, it's not. But if there is something that you're doing right now that is simply the way you're eating is not quite the way your thyroid wants you to eat, you are not causing irreparable harm at this time. You can alter the course, and very rapidly, actually, your thyroid will start to respond differently. There are a few things you can do to destroy your thyroid, but keto isn't one of them. Amy?
Agree.
Okay. Would you disagree with that statement?
I mean, the only thing that destroys your thyroid is having the gland removed because you have thyroid cancer, or sometimes they'll remove it if you have really severe Graves' disease, which is the hyperthyroid, or irradiation. They will give you radioactive iodine to destroy your thyroid,
literally
to render it non-functional, again, for thyroid cancer or Graves' disease. That's destroying your thyroid. Anything you do nutritionally or lifestyle-wise is going to affect the production of thyroid hormones. It's not going to damage the gland, as far as I know.
Right. Now, Hashimoto's, an example, is an autoimmune condition, and that autoimmune condition can attack the thyroid in a way that can, I believe, cause permanent damage.
That is a good point. Yes, I think so.
But again, that's an autoimmune condition causing the damage to your thyroid. And actually, for those people, invariably I see a ketogenic diet improve the autoimmune issue, so it less attacky to the thyroid.
Yeah, like I said earlier, I think I know some people with Hashimoto's they had Hashimoto's to begin with. They adopted a ketogenic diet, and the Hashimoto's went away, and they were able to stop the thyroid medicine. Now, if you can stop taking thyroid medicine under medical supervision, of course, then your thyroid gland is clearly still pumping out some hormones. So if the gland was, affected at some point, it's still pumping out enough hormone, apparently.
Right. The other thing I want to say that I know from previous experience I've spent a lot of time looking at thyroid, mostly because mine was a little wacky. Sometimes people will be on thyroid medicine for a while. For whatever reason, they get a test that indicates maybe, oh, your thyroid's getting better, or they get tired of taking the medication and they just kind of stop taking it themselves. And they think, oh, I must be better by now. And then they have sort of a period where they kind of sailing, okay, things aren't falling apart. That can happen for a long time. And then months or even years later, everything collapses.
Yeah.
The issue in that case is they needed that thyroid medication the whole time.
Or a lower dose sometimes.
Or maybe just a lower dose. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so, one of the things that I see happening in the ketogenic community is there's this idea that keto should heal everything to a degree that we don't need medication anymore. And I just want to say that is an erroneous kind of thought. If you have like we said, if you have a condition like Hashimoto's, and some people with Hashimoto's, they still need medication. But if you have an autoimmune condition, you heal the autoimmune condition or suppress it so it stops attacking your thyroid. It might be that your thyroid starts working at a level it doesn't need medication. However, that might not happen, and you might still need medication. But if you're not an autoimmune condition case, you probably will just continue to need to take thyroid hormone. I can't say that there aren't just spontaneous fixes that happen to people, but the point I want to make is just going keto is not a reason that you should be able to stop taking thyroid medication.
Correct. And we could say that about any number of medications, even things that keto is supposed to fix. I know people that are like following the plan to the letter and the blood pressure is still high. So, most of the time they're able, let's say they were on 2 or 3 different medicines, are able to eliminate 1 or 2 and maybe get on a lower dose, but they can't stop it altogether. Right. So yeah, keto, as magical as it is in some ways, it doesn't fix everything I wish it did. I wish it did, but it doesn't.
So if you stop taking your thyroid medication during your ketogenic experience and then suddenly your thyroid craps out on you again, it's probably that you weren't properly medicating it all along.
Maybe, yeah.
So ultimately, I just think we want to reassure people that thyroids are not generally destroyed by your diet. They might be destroyed by an autoimmune condition or cancer, but otherwise, there's a feedback mechanism.
It's an adjustment that makes perfect sense biologically, but you might just feel like garbage. But your body is trying to protect you. It really is. It's a protective mechanism. It is slowing down your metabolism for a reason.
It assumes the reason you're feeding it so little is there is a horrible famine happening, and it's trying to keep you from dying in it.
Yeah, and so you better slow down that metabolism if you want to make it through.
Right. Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much for talking to me today. I hope we gave people some reassurance about the thing that they're having freakouts about.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right. Is there anything you want to say? How can people get a hold of you, find you, read your things, all that?
Yeah, my website needs an overhaul, so I'm not even going to give it, but you can find me on Twitter. My handle is Tuit Nutrition, TUIT Nutrition. That's also my YouTube channel name, Tuit Nutrition, and my books. If you look me up on Amazon, there's the Alzheimer's Antidote, the Stall Slayer, and the one with Dr. Westman, End Your Carb Confusion. And I'll put in a tiny plug. I work for this company called Adapt Your Life that Dr. Westman founded. We have online courses about keto. The website is long, but just adaptyourlifeacademy.com. Adaptyourlifeacademy.com.
I will put links in the notes.
Thank you. That's easier. And I am writing a thyroid book as we speak, but it's going to be a few more months before it's done.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thanks for talking to me today, and I will make sure that people look you up so that they can find out more as that book comes out.
Awesome. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon.